In this video, we'll learn about the derived columns, which are used in between the source and destination in the data flow component. Derived columns are useful when you don't have some data which is based on some computation or some kind of metadata or a literal value that's not available in the source of the data. So you can add these new columns along the way, and destination will get those columns if you map them to a table or something. So we are going to see this how this works is a very good useful transform that most of the time we use. So for this I have created a integration services project, derived columns. We are going to add a new package, control flow. So let's use a data flow component. And obviously for our source and destination, we will need the connection managers. So for destination, let's create our database connection. That will be OLADP, object linking and embedding. We already have this Happy Burger connection manager. I created it as a project level connection, so we can use it in multiple packages. So make the name a little bit readable, and for the source we have a flat file connection that we'll create. Let me show you the files that we'll be importing in. This is the membership data file. It's a small comma separated values file which we are going to load, and you can see it has column names in the first row. There are 4 columns: first name, last name, birth date, and gender. These are the values. So we'll be loading that, and along the way we'll add some derived columns. So let's give it a membership file and browse to our file, select it, and it automatically detects what is the delimiter used in the file, and you can preview the data here. It's such a small file, so you can see all the rows right here. What we will see that by default it put the birth date column to be the string, but let's change it to something more appropriate. Where is the date column? So we'll make it a date, and everything else we'll leave as is. So that is our membership file connection manager, and this is the destination Happy Burger. So let's double click the data flow task and configure this source. So we will choose our membership file. We can change the name of it, and destination, which will be a table in our SQL Server database. We'll call this membership data table, and that's where we notice that we have not connected it yet. So let me show you the table, what it says. Membership data, it is a staging schema table, and if we look at the columns, we see there are birthday, last name, first name, and ID, that's the system generated, and the gender. So these are the first 4 columns that we will be getting from the file, but then we have another 3 columns: age, load date time, meaning the date and time at which the process of this loading the file was performed, load file name, what was the name of the file. So these will be the 3 derived columns we'll be adding to our data flow. Let's get back to our project. I have not connected this yet. So in between this, we'll have a derived column transform, and we'll connect this to this and to this. Let's configure the derived column. So the first column we'll be creating will be age, and as you can see, age is a calculated column. We can make it a calculated column based on the birth date. For this, we need to take the difference between the two dates, which is the first one is the birth date and today's date today's date or time at which the file is being processed, and we'll use the function called date diff. So let's put that in here. And obviously, we don't want the difference between the 2 days being the dates, being the days. We want the difference between the years. That's how we calculate the age. So if it's less than 1 year, it will not be counted. As for the start date, we'll use this column, birth date, and for the end date, we'll use the system function, which is current date and time. So now it automatically found the data type, determined the data type, which is the integer. So that is one derived column. And as you can see, the next column is load date time. So let's add that here too. Load date time. What is the load date time? We want a static value, meaning at the moment the package started executing, we want to capture that time and keep it the same for every row, so that it will not change even by a millisecond or whatever the smallest unit of measurement is. So for this, we'll just look for a system variable. If I am not mistaken, the system variable container start time should be the one we're looking for. So that will be a static value constant at which the time the package started executing. So we'll use that as a load date time. Now the third column was load file name. We can use a literal for that. And let's find the file name in real world, or if you have a variable that determines the file name to load, you could have used that variable here. But in our case, we just want to use a literal and see what is the file name. So file name is this. This is the full path we want, and then the file name itself is and we can I think we have to use the escape character. Yes. So this will be the file name stored in the load file name column in the table, in the destination table, and the data type automatically is Unicode. Let's just make sure that this is what it is, 150. Good. So now we got 3 derived columns that we'll be loading into our destination table. Click OK here. Now let's go to configure this destination We have the database selected as a Happy Burgers connection manager and choose a table that we want to load into, staging membership data. Let's go to the mapping, and obviously this is the system generated identity column, so we don't need to worry about that. And it automatically, because I chose the exactly the same names for the derived columns as the column names in the destination table, that is why it automatically mapped them to those input columns. So click OK here and we should be good to go. Let's save the package and execute it. Before we do that, let's go and check what is the, if there is any data in there. So let's clean that up. Well, yes, there is. So I'm using truncate to make sure that the identity column values is started again. Let's just comment that out. It is a blank table now. Go here, right click and execute the package. There was a very few rows, just 9 rows, so it didn't take very long, but we can see the concept of derived columns even though the file is very small. What I meant to say is using the container start time, you see all the values in each row are exactly the same. If we had used get date, there was a good possibility that these values would have changed from row to row or maybe a couple rows after a couple rows. So I prefer it this way so we can identify the exact timing and find all the rows that were loaded in that batch. And calculation for age, you can see it is calculating the difference between the years, like 1985 and now is the 2019, so it's 34 years. So this all looks good to me. So this is all we have for derived columns. You can use many other things to generate the values for derived columns, and according to your requirements and how the destination table is or what kind of metadata you can choose. Another good idea is to try out these system variables. For example, the computer name, and there was another uh, task ID, all these things, task name. So if you do that, this will be the name for that value. So anyway, just take a look in each of those variables and try to generate some of the columns for your packages to load. It is very useful transform, and generally we use it pretty much in every um, 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 file upload packages I have built. I hope you have learned something and thank you for watching it.